Thanks very much. All right. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All you need is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow. Someone warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. When bees begin stones, we're made of dreams and bones. Need a place to call my own, for the time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain, find my way in nature's chain. Tune my body and my brain to the music of the land. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All you need is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow. Someone warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. Plant your rows straight and long, timber them with prayer and song. Mother Earth will make you strong if you give her love and care. Old crow watching hungrily from his perch in yonder tree. In my garden I am free as a feathered leaf up there. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All you need is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow. Someone warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to Hearts Trails Through Time. You have been enjoying the music of Tom Muir and Amelia Osborne. They have put together a great program of folk music for us today, some of which inspired by the musical traditions of some of the Scots-Irish settlers who came down the Great Wagon Road, I would imagine. So in keeping with our theme today. So they are going to continue to share their music with us throughout the afternoon. So one more round of applause for Tom and Amelia. My name is Randolph Lewis, and this is my wife, Abigail Jennings, on her way up to the mic. And together we are excited to bring Hearts to you today here in Troutman. We had hoped, of course, to be on site at Sherrill's Path in the Colonial Crossing community, but the weather had other plans. So a huge thanks to Jane and Leighton Getzinger for making their home available so that our show could go on, rain or shine. Of course, if you were traveling on the Great Wagon Road in the 18th century, your show would have gone on as well, rain or shine. But we're happy to be inside, especially with the threat of thunderstorms. So a huge thanks to Jane and Leighton. And if the weather clears up, which it may be doing, we still hope to gather at Sherrill's Path for a nature walk after the formal part of our program. So stay tuned for more info about that in just a bit. And as we move into the Memorial Day weekend, let's be sure to remember the reason for that holiday as we honor those service members and their families who sacrificed so much for our country. Hearts Happenings, and you are at one right now if you just stumbled upon us, are monthly place-based programs designed to foster our shared sense of community by exploring what is right here beneath our feet. We got our start at Huntersville's historic Cedar Grove and Hugh Torrance House and Store back in 2022, and have recently begun to take our Hearts show on the road, as we're doing here today in Troutman. Hearts stands for history, ecology, arts, reunion, trails, and store. And that is our formula for free community place-based programming on site at some of our region's most special places. Trails Through Time is our theme today as we celebrate the history of some of the oldest roads in our region and the people who traveled them, most notably Adam Sherrill, who traveled that path which bears his name in the mid-1700s on his way to a new home in the Catawba Valley. And the T in Heart stands for trails, and part of the Heart's mission is to connect local history with the natural world through trails. And that not only means creating new interpretive trails at historic sites, but also by recognizing and preserving our area's oldest trails, which are pieces of history in their own right. And that is certainly the case with Sherrill's Path, the centuries-old trail that we are gathered near today, if not on. There's an old saying that goes, "We make the way by walking." This refers to the act of blazing your own trail, learning by doing, diving in and pushing forward, even if there is no road beneath your feet. That is what these settlers did during the 18th century as they made their way from Pennsylvania down the Great Wagon Road, or GWR, as it is called for short among historians, that ran south and west from Philadelphia through Maryland and Virginia and into North Carolina. Imagine traveling that road nearly 300 years ago, what the experience might have been like. There was no GPS on the GWR, and travelers could expect to put several miles behind them each day rather than the several hundred that we would travel today. The journey was long and grueling, and the conditions were harsh, and the road could be either impassably muddy, like it might be today, or intolerably dusty, depending on the weather. So there were no moving vans, of course. Families had to pare down their belongings before departing and carry everything else with them, often walking beside their heavily laden wagons. Indeed, the decision to embark on that journey to the Carolina backcountry and the experience itself transformed the lives not only of those who traveled it, but also of all those who came after them. The significance of the Great Wagon Road and its offshoots, like Sherrill's Path, in our history is monumental. That is why it is so important to preserve the historic trails themselves and the stories of those intrepid wanderers who took them. So I'd like to take a moment now to recognize Jane Getzinger. In addition to saving the day by providing us with this fantastic rain location, she was also instrumental in saving the section of Sherrill's Path right around the corner in the Colonial Crossing community. While attending neighborhood meetings many years ago, Jane heard someone mention that the old-timers in this area claimed that Sherrill's Path came through here. So Jane enlisted the help of historian Gary Fries, who was able to validate that claim. And then fast forward a little bit from there to when that section of the path was in danger of being bulldozed for the development, Jane brought its existence to the attention of the town of Troutman, who stepped in and who now holds a permanent easement on that strip of land surrounding the path. So hats off to Jane.
About 60 acres, you know.
That has preserved along with, okay, fantastic.
We fought hard for that.
Nice, we're glad you did. All right, we have got a great program in store for you today. We're excited to welcome today's keynote speaker, historian and Professor Susan Autry, to tell us more about Sherrill's path and the story of Adam Sherrill, who took the road less traveled. The E in Hearts is for ecology, and we'll spend an eco-minute with Aaron and Abigail to learn more about some native plant species growing along Sherrill's path, and quite possibly at your house as well. And if weather permits, they'll be leading a nature walk on-site at Sherrill's path after Dr. Autry's talk. We are excited to have Chris Manley here today, sharing his amazing collection of historic maps and artifacts, which are displayed here on this table. And he's going to tell us more about those treasures in just a bit. We have water available along with some artisan goods at our welcome table on the front porch, along with more information about Hearts, our upcoming programs, and our historic preservation projects. Much thanks to the Iredell Arts Council and the North Carolina Arts Council for awarding Hearts a grassroots grant to help make today's events possible. And next, I know that's a lot of information, so I will defer now to Tom and Amelia, who are going to take it away with a few more songs before we get back to our content. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We got a couple of tunes to take us into the eco minute here. If you will get ready for that with these next tunes. In this ocean, when the world lay in a dream, there was rhythm in the splash and roll, but not a voice to sing. And the moon shone on the breakers, and the morning warmed the waves, till a single cell did jump and hum for joy, as though to say, this is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden? And the day shone bright and round her, till the one turned into two, and the two into 10,000 things, and the old things into new. And on some virgin beachhead, one lonesome critter crawled, and he looked about and shouted out in his most astonished drawl, this is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden? And all the sky was buzzing, and the ground was carpet green, and the weary children of the woods went dancing in between. And the people sang rejoicing when the fields were glad with grain, this song of celebration from the cities on the plains. This is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock in the gentle arms of Eden. Now there's smoke across the harbor, and there's factories on the shore, and the world is ill with greed and will, an enterprise of war. But I will lay my burdens in the cradle of your grace, and the shining beaches of your love, and the sea of your embrace. This is my home, this is my only home, this is the only sacred ground that I have ever known. Should I stray in the dark night alone, rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Rock me, goddess, in the gentle arms of Eden. Celebrate that, and you can sing along if you find the groove on it. Love of life, love of creation, love thy neighbor, love the earth. We have been called now, we must awaken, return our souls their worth. Tune into the season's rhythm, the song of the earth ringing loud and true. A river divine flows through creation, it calls from inside you. The world needs you, the world needs me. Hand in hand we got the power of we. The world gives love, the world gives care, the very things we're called to share. Awake my soul to hope and commitment, sacred places fresh and new, to all that is good, justice created, oceans and skies so blue. We are stewards, we are creation, love empowers what we do. The curve of oneness bends toward justice, solutions pouring through. The world needs you, the world needs me. Hand in hand we got the power of we. The world gives love, the world gives care, the very things we're called to share. Nature heals as people start healing, world made stable, life renewed. Rhythm bent as restoration, don't you know it's true? Curve of one and depth you can take it, never knowing what you'll do. There's two words, can we, and your must, but this all is true. The world needs you, the world needs me. Hand in hand we got the power of we. The world gives love, the world gives care, the very things we're called to share. The world needs you, the world needs me. Hand in hand we got the power of we. The world gives love, the world gives care, the very things we're called to share. Yeah, the very things we're called to share.
All right, thanks again to Tom and Amelia for fantastic music. It sounds great, guys. All right, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about some upcoming Hearts events. I'll start with the Sharp House, just up the road in Statesville. Hearts has recently begun to serve the Sharp House by facilitating some repairs, enhancing programming, tours, etiquette classes. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I wanted to mention the tea and tour events. These regular events are a personal tour of the first floor of the Sharp House. And they include a traditional English tea, so you can find out more about that on our website or theirs. At the Hugh Torrance House and Store in Huntersville, this is where Hearts got its start, and that store is open for tours every Sunday. This is the oldest standing store in North Carolina, by the way, and the store features a selection of artisan goods, honey, books, special gifts, and more, all with a decidedly local twist. Let's see, coming up on June 13th at Huntersville's Cedar Grove is our 5th annual Junion event. This is a celebration of the Hearts Reunion Project, which is a genealogical initiative. It's a chance to share new research resulting from that initiative. Andre Kearns will be returning as guest speaker this year with a focus on Brevard's Chapel, the amazing Carpenter Gothic church built shortly after emancipation by formerly enslaved individuals in Denver, North Carolina, that Hearts is helping to preserve. Andre is a genealogist, entrepreneur, and co-chair of the Hearts Reunion Project, and his presentation is entitled, Who Was Henry Brevard? And that will illuminate the life of the formerly enslaved blacksmith for whom Brevard's Chapel is named. And then coming up in July, on July 4th actually, we will continue the focus on the ironworking history of our region with a special America 250 celebration called Forging Our Freedom, featuring blacksmith demonstrations, spinning wheel demonstrations, and some other living history, and that will be at Huntersville's Cedar Grove and Hugh Torrance House and Store. Heart's ecologist-in-residence is Aaron Kampe, and he is a botanist, an educator, and an entrepreneur, and the founder of Elk Haven Herbals. So please join me in welcoming Aaron, along with Abigail, to the mic, and they're going to tell us more about some of the fascinating plants found along Sherrill's Path. And with any luck, we will gather at Sherrill's Path after our program for a nature walk with Aaron and Abigail, where you can see these special plants for yourselves. So ladies and gentlemen, Aaron and Abigail. You guys want a handful of this?
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And even though we had to pivot to this inside arena versus being out there on the trail, I think we're doing it all right. So thank you for pivoting with us. So Randolph and I did go and walk the trail, I guess it was Thursday, and just scoping things out, preparing for today. And fortunately, I did take some pictures of things on the trail because I don't think Aaron has had a chance to walk the trail yet. So I did share 2 of those species with Aaron and asked him to talk a little bit about those today. And hopefully you can join us on the trail and see them firsthand. But I have a feeling that on our nature walk, we're going to even see more species that Aaron can just speak to directly on the trail. But for today, and you do have some brief information and pictures on your flyer, just so you can see the plants that we're speaking about. I'm going to ask Aaron to share more about wild comfrey and beerberry. Aaron, take it away.
Sure. All right, so there's a lot of information on those pamphlets that you guys got. A lot of stuff that I don't even know is on there, right? Just a little bit about the probably the forest that we're heading into over here, and really kind of the primary forest that you'll see around the Piedmont of North Carolina now. This is what we classify as an oak, hickory, pine forest. So it's probably the most common forest type in the Piedmont. It is a natural community itself, but it's also it's become increasingly common with the urbanization that we've caused over probably the last 2 or 3 centuries. I think a lot of people see a forested area and just assume it's been there for a long time, but it's definitely not the case, right? Most of the oak, hickory, pine forests that you'll walk into that are comprised mostly of oaks and hickories and pines, right, and some maples, they're probably in their secondary or even in their tertiary growth phase, meaning that they've been cleared 2 or 3 times already. A lot of people just don't realize that, I find. One of the things that my students were always surprised by was that the forest that they're in used to not be a forest before, 2 or 3 times, right? So the species that we're looking at that are common in oak, hickory, pine forest is understory plants. The couple that Abigail chose there that we'll see are the wild comfrey. Comfrey is a really good example of a plant that Europeans just named because it looked like something that they knew. They were like, probably comfrey, right? Even though the comfrey out here is not even related to the comfrey that they knew. It just is another leaf that's kind of hairy. And they were like, I bet that's comfrey, and everybody just went with it, right? It's a keystone species in dry, open woodland. It has blue flowers. It's related to Virginia bluebells, which is something that you might be familiar with, and you can kind of tie it to because it also has blue flowers. So it's an important pollinator species in the understory of the oak hickory pine forest. It's in your pamphlet there, you can see it has a lot of medicinal uses. A lot of the medicinal uses for early plants they were flirting with that line of safety, right? Where they were like, this probably does some good stuff to you if you live, you know what I mean? So you can see there that it's got a useful anti-cancer compound. A lot of plants have those, but once again, if you think about the way chemotherapy works in general, it's trying to kill enough bad cells and keep enough good cells alive, right? So if you're ever wondering like why those things make good cancer treatments, it's because they're doing damage, but just the perfect amount of damage, right? That other species that you see on the pamphlet there, deerberry, is related to blueberries. It's much more common than other blueberries here in the Piedmont. It's hard to grow blueberries here, y'all. If you've ever tried to grow blueberries, it's not an easy task. Blueberries are really finicky. They want a lot of water. They want really good drainage. And it's tough. If you want to pull off a blueberry species, we have rabbit-eye blueberries in the Piedmont that you can grow, that you can kind of get away with. They're a little more heat tolerant than kind of the blueberries that you get at the grocery store, which are all high bush blueberries that are, really common throughout the Northeast. Deerberry, however, is a shrub that you can grow here successfully in the Piedmont. It's typically a multi-stemmed shrub in the oak hickory pine forest. Though a lot of times, depending on how old that area is and how disturbed it is frequently, it'll just kind of grow really low to the ground. But it has beautiful flowers compared to a lot of other blueberry species. If you've ever seen a blueberry's flowers, they're just tiny little bells, right? But the deerberry has big, what we call pendulous flowers that are super decorative. You can't eat deerberry. Obviously, as the name implies, deer do, right? But deer basically eat just about everything. I've spent years and years battling deer in my own personal garden. I've done every trick imaginable, including like hanging up soap. You guys ever heard of this one? Oh yeah, you're supposed to like hang soap in your garden. I kid you not, I hung soap and I saw them munching on the soap. And they were like, well, are these treats from the trees? So in any case, they do like deerberry. You can eat it also, but even though the internet describes them as tart, they're like astringent. It's like an astringent blueberry. It makes your mouth really like, right? So they do much better in jams and jellies, like a lot of our wild fruit trees here, than obviously with equal parts sugar, right? That's how we make everything taste good. So, anyways, lots of cool little facts on there. Hopefully, we'll see some of those.
Mention one thing about the comfrey's seed pods.
Oh, okay. So the comfrey, one of the interesting things about the comfrey seeds is they'll stick to you. So they're readily moved around by all the mammals, they've got those sticky seeds. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Aaron. And hold on. So when you do walk through the woods, I just wanted you to recognize when you see the little brown things on your legs, and you want to plant some comfrey at your house, don't pick them off till you get home.
Right.
And the other thing to note about both of these flowers, they do have beautiful flowers, and so we are hoping to make Sherrill's Path an annual event, and we are shifting to April. So hopefully in April we'll get to catch the blue flowers of the wild columbine and the deer. But look forward to getting on the path with you all. Thank you.
All right, thanks again, Aaron and Andrea, for our eco minute today. All right, let's see. Before we turn it back over to Tom and Amelia for a few more songs, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors today, Iredell Arts Council and the North Carolina Arts Council, of course, also Lake Norman Realty, Blue Harbor Bank, Elk Haven Herbals, and of course, Heart Circle members. Heart Circle is our membership organization, and if you like this free community place-based programming that you're experiencing today, you can help support it by joining Heart Circle, and information is online at our website, at heartscode.org. Heartscode.org. We were Hearts Collaborative is our official name, and we realized that was a long domain name for a website, and Hearts Code was available, so we got it. So you can get there by Hearts Collaborative as well, but heartsco.org, we're happy for our new website domain. Let's see, I also like to thank Lauren and Cameron for helping make this day possible today. Thanks once again to Jane and Leighton Getzinger for providing us with this fantastic rain location. In just a few minutes, we'll be welcoming our main event, keynote speaker Susan Autry. But now we're going to turn it back over to Tom and Amelia for a few more songs. Take it away, guys.
Love is a marketplace, love is a burning feast, love is a cowering thing, love is a raging beast, love is an empty stare, love is the longest night, love is an awakened dream, love is a morning light. Maybe that's all there is, maybe that's all there is, maybe that's all there is. Only love.
Love is a wilderness, love is a lonely home, love is forgiveness, love is a pen and go, love is a lesson learned, love is a fruity mind, love is keep alive, love is a making sun.
Maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's all there is. Only love. Love is a morning kiss. Love is a leap of faith. Love is hand in hand. Love is a landing place. Love can make you laugh. Love can make you sing. Love's like a broken heart. Love everything. Maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's all there is. Only love. Maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's all there is. Maybe that's all there is. Only love. Only love. Hey, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're going to do a traditional Irish tune now for you to get ready for our next segment here. This is one you heard probably before. This is one of Amelia's favorites to play because you don't usually hear it on the claw hammer, which is more of an Appalachian style of playing, but she gets to have a lot of fun doing it. So it's a fun one for us. It's called the Swallowtail Jig.
everybody. Chris is an avid historian, collector, as well as a board member and treasurer for the Hugh Torrance House and Store in Huntersville. And he has graciously brought some of his collection that relates to our theme today. So let's bring him up to tell us more about what he's got to share. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Manley.
I didn't prepare a big speech or anything, but I did bring some cool stuff. When we first moved to the Carolina Piedmont area, we actually landed on Beatty's Ford, and I had no idea what I was, landing right in the middle of. And so ever since the first time I was driving to Charlotte and I saw this big rock and I saw a sign on it and I had to go read it, and I read about the Battle of the Bees and about the Mecklenburg militia and a dozen people versus however many hundred. I'm sure they amplified it up. I got excited about that. And I went down a whole bunch of different rabbit holes. I went down the mech deck rabbit hole. This is what started it all. I found this coin in a pawn shop in Boise, Idaho, actually. But I always look in pawn shops. And this is an 1875 mech deck centennial coin. So we just passed May 20th, as I don't know if anybody even knows about mech deck. We were down at Trade and Tryon, firing the cannon and having a lot of fun. And anyway, those families connect directly back to the Great Wagon Road. And then as I would get more and more involved in buying historical documents, I've got some things in a case here, much to my wife's chagrin, continuing to do that, and I've been doing it now for almost 20 years. You'd see those names on there, and you say, okay, who was arrested for stealing a horse? And you'd see that last name, Sherrill, or not to disparage the Sherrills, or any number of German or Scots-Irish names. And then you follow that trail and you end up becoming an involuntary genealogist. And so I love meeting old originals around here. You meet somebody and was your dad, your granddaddy was here? Was your great-granddaddy? Try to get before the Civil War. And a lot of times it connects back to something direct. And at this point, I've gotten to the point where, a lot of the time I actually think of it in my mind back to a specific thing and connect it back to that document. And there's something about holding it in your hand that connects people, because history for a lot of people, I hated history in school, and for a lot of people it's hard to connect to it. And something about holding it in your hand. And our keynote speaker and I were talking about this earlier. When you hold the document that was signed by somebody, like there's a document here from 1778, and it was signed by a general who did the Cherokee expedition into Asheville. And just to hold that and know that that ink was put there by that person. So this gets me really excited. I know it's not everybody's thing, but connecting that, I also brought some old maps, so you can kind of see maybe if people had access to this. Most of them didn't, but you can see at least the bigger picture of how the majority of these people came from Philadelphia or parts that are around and made their way down here. So the handout that you got has a really close-up view of some of this area and how some of the little spurs are. And people that did these maps, they think of it as a road, but it was really a bunch of different roads. There were a bunch of different spurs all the way down. There were splits and reconnections. So anyway, so afterward, if you'd like to come see some of this stuff, we can talk about it. I've got also the very first state of North Carolina Great Seal. So that was designed in the 1700s and it was used until 1794, the first seal. And you won't see those anywhere. And it's a wax seal, it's right there. I think it's really cool. And some other stuff. I also brought a French and Indian war period tomahawk. So if you want all that. This metal was actually forged in, estimated around 1763-ish into the war. So anyway.
All right.
Glad to talk to everybody.
Thanks again, Chris. And as I just mentioned, he will be on hand after the keynote presentation for you to peruse the collection, and he can answer any questions and talk to you some more. All right, we have come to the moment that you've been waiting for, our main event. Susan Autry, from whom we will learn more about Sherrill's Path, the Great Wagon Road, the people who traveled it, including Adam Sherrill himself and his connection to this place. As a seasoned educator with over 20 years of experience teaching in the college classroom, Susan Autry has focused her career on bringing history to life for her students. Throughout her journey, she has taught at Central Piedmont Community College, York Technical College, and the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. As a full-time instructor at Central Piedmont, she chaired the history department for 7 years received several awards for her teaching, and was appointed as a faculty fellow at the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. In 2023, she was also awarded the Distinguished Parr Fellow Award by the college. She has been featured on several episodes of the Trail of History docuseries, as well as the PBS documentary Paved with Gold. Susan has served on the board of directors at Historic Latta Place and also volunteered as a costumed docent, giving tours and historical lectures. She's a member of the Mecklenburg Historical Society, the North Carolina Association of Historians, the American Historical Association, and the Organization of American Historians. In 2023, she co-authored a college-level American history textbook entitled America, A Work in Progress with Kendall Hunt Publishing that was distributed nationwide in 2024. She currently serves as the president of the board of directors at the Mooresville Museum, is on the Historic Preservation Commission in Mooresville, and is a part of the Iredell County 250th Committee. And this next piece is very exciting. In just a few weeks, she will complete her PhD in history. Following her talk today, she will take your questions. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the soon-to-be Dr. Susan Autry.
Oh, yeah, you didn't suggest that. Thank you. This is perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon. How are y'all?
Good afternoon.
So, I am a local. Not a lot of people are left that are local, but Troutman, Statesville, Iredell County, it's so exciting that so many of these places have such a history, and a lot of people don't realize it. And one of the things, Sherrill's Path, right through here, was so important to the development of this area as a whole. And Dr. Gary Freese did so much work with this. And I wanted to start, I'm going to go back and talk about the history. I'm going to go back and talk about the Sherrill family. But before that, I wanted to look at how this whole thing started. And I pulled Dr. Freese's work and what he found. And you were involved, as you said, as well. I went out to the actual location. Has anybody been out there where the historical marker is and it shows the path? We drove by. Okay, you drove by. Well, what was really interesting is, like a lot of historical places, you stand there and you're looking at it, and then you're surrounded by homes, new build homes, that sadly, if you're from here, you know, have taken over our area. And in this case, it's really true. And so I went out there and I looked, and to this side, new build houses to this side, and you're right in the middle of a neighborhood. And so I assume that is that you were fighting to preserve this, that entryway there. And
Well, the
path that goes across it, exactly.
The road right through it, though.
Right. Well, it's beautifully preserved in terms of it could have been just the rest of those homes. And so
It could have been erased.
Exactly, and thank you so much for doing that. Anything to preserve anything from the past. So Dr. Freese did an immaculate job of going around and making sure that this was exactly what it should have been, preserved and held as history. So I'm going to read you just a little bit of his report and not get too deep into it. But he wrote, Sherrill's Path, the first Eurocentric road through what became Iredell County, followed old buffalo traces from Shallow Ford on the Yadkin River to Sherrill's Ford on the Catawba. The Sherrill family, according to legend, the first settlers west of the Catawba, used it in 1747. W.N. Watt, the only person to ever research the trace, found mention of its route in colonial deeds for locations north of Statesville. He then conjectured that it followed a route near Troutman. Mildred Miller, who drew the maps for Homer Keever's Iredell County history, followed the North Carolina Collett map of 1770 to show the path angling south from its intersection with the mountain road close to what became Perth Road. Richard A. Enid followed her lead, suggesting that the path was on the east side of Young's Creek. Local lore, however, suggests that Sherrill's Path was on the west side of Young's Creek, as preserved in the memories of Monroe Road residents. To find proof for this, I went back to the Iredell area's first local map. And so then he goes on this quest to look at all of the places that were mentioned and old maps and things, and he looks around this area, and what do you know? He was able to find actual evidence and archaeological finds that said, yes, this is exactly where this path was. And so his conclusion, he says, I can say without hesitation that the road trace that goes through the proposed development, which is the place where we were originally going to meet, is the same route that is on Sharp's map of 1773. And most likely is the original buffalo trace that the Sherrills turned into their path. I can also say that the rocky site right next to the depressed roadbed is the Young family home going back to at least the time of the Sharp map. Without a doubt, these two relics are the oldest identifiable locations Troutman has in the recognition and reclamation of its heritage. So what an amazing thing. What an amazing thing that it can go back that far. And so what that first thing he's mentioning, and I'm getting to the Sherrills, is that there's documentations, and when we look back that far, Granville grants and Granville writings are excellent sources. And this is what he started with. The earliest documentation of Sherrill's path was a Granville land warrant to survey a plantation for William Watt. What it said was, quote, you are forthwith to add measure and lay out unto William Watt a plantation containing 640 acres of land lying in Anson County on the south branch of Fourth Creek, near or joining John McCullough crossing Sherrill's path and lying near John Oliphant's line, February 18, 1750. Now, what we're talking about here, Iredell County in 1750 was in Anson and Rowan County. Iredell County was formed in 1788. So, don't be too confused there. So, that's where it goes back to. So, what was this Sherrill's path that we're talking about, that we're all here to see about? All right, the Sherrills. Everybody knows Sherrill's Ford, right? Modern day Sherrill's Ford. Everybody's heard of it. Well, where did it come from? So, let's look at the Sherrills. Who are the Sherrills? This family started up, and you've got a map. If you don't, you can look over there at that map too. We're going to go all the way back up north. We're going up into the Pennsylvania, Maryland area. And this family did what a lot of people did, is they decided to come south, the Great Wagon Road. That was kind of a standard way of getting into the south. They left the area, decided to come down here, look for better land, cheaper land, and leave whatever political strife or angst they were dealing with. And they came further down, and they did what most people did. They went, through that area, went through the Shenandoah. If you've ever been through 81, if you've driven Highway 81, one of the most beautiful drives you can go through. And so they came down that area. But you think about it today, like this muggy, wet, soppy day, and it's an inconvenience to us. I'm like, do I need my umbrella to get out of my car to get to here? And I'm like, oh, it's soppy. And then think about what they were dealing with. You mentioned earlier, ew, it's yucky, and their wheels are going to get stuck in the mud. I mean, think about traveling outside like they had to the distance they had to. It was miserable. Their horses, their things are all exposed. We don't even comprehend what it was like, and the miles they had to go, and the distance. And so, went down through the Shenandoah. Further on down, they came into the Wachovia area, North Carolina. This road came further down. And then they eventually, a branch of the Dan River would branch off further. And then they get to the Yadkin River. And it was from there was a ford, and it was called Shallow Ford. And from there, there's so many little branches. Like you said, it's not just the Great Wagon Road. They eventually would branch off again, and they would find the Catawba River. Now, the Catawba River was interesting. It was, we think in terms today of what our topography looks like here, because we're used to big old Lake Norman, but it wasn't there. And so the Catawba River was quite, interesting and big, and they were quite surprised. I read one thing that said they hadn't seen anything that massive since they saw the Potomac. So they came down, they saw the Catawba, and they needed to cross it. Unfortunately, they were a little afraid. What they did was stood there for a couple of days and contemplated, how do we get across this huge raging river at the point that they were at, which we now identify as Sherrill's Ford. And so what Mr. Sherrill did was one of his young enslaved boys actually took a horse and started walking across it. And they realized, okay, this is not too difficult to get across here. They realized it was not too deep, and he went across westward. When he made it across, they realized this is a good place. Thus, Sherrill's Ford. And so that's why we named it that. All these years later, it's still named that. So he was considered to be the first European white man and family crossover. And he would settle in that area. Others, however, were over there. They had just not settled. They were trappers, they were hunters, they had been there, they just had not settled. The Sherrill family settled. Now, this was not a very welcoming area. The Cherokees were in this area, and they were not the nicest to new people. And so there would be a period that there were wars for 2 years. People from, they were called Catawbans, had to flee, had to leave, and it got ugly. You can read about lots of violence against these new intruders that came from up north. It got ugly. As a result, most of us know what had to be built right here in Iredell County for defense, right? Fort Dobbs. And so Fort Dobbs had to be built. But the Sherrills realized too that they are going to need to go back home and get all different sorts of materials and things to survive. And what was the best way to do it? Well, either go back the difficult path that they came, or realizing that they had a sense of direction. Let's look at all these animal paths and Indian little trails that have already been, filtered out here, and let's just make our own way and find our own way back to that other river we saw, which we now know is the Yadkin River, and there was another ford there called Shallow Ford. So let's just see what we can do, and that's what they did. They went from Sherrill's Ford, and I'm using names now, they didn't call it that, but let's use Sherrill's Ford, and let's make our way back to that other place that we now call the Yadkin River, and let's go and hook back up that way. And that's what they did. And that became Sherrill's Path that we know today. This pathway became such an important place that it was the first road through Iredell County. And that is huge. Why is it huge? Because it's right here. It's right here. And it was such an important vein that all of these places that we recognize today in Iredell County would become, recognizable and an important thread of what we needed to build an entire community on. For example, it was the first road through Statesville. Statesville, what an important part of Iredell County, to say the very least. I mean, wow. And it's just a path. It's just a path. It is a tiny path to start with. But the Sherrills decided this is going to be the easiest way that we can get back up north. And they just decided to create this little walkway, and look what came of it. And so, above and beyond that, Fort Dobbs. Why is Fort Dobbs on Sherrill's Path? It's real simple. We need a way to simply get to a protective place and defensive place. We need it on this little path. Fort Dobbs is on Sherrill's Path. But even more interesting, where does Sherrill's Path, if you look at your map, you have it in front of you, if you look at where Sherrill's Path goes, it terminates where? Troutman, on Perth Road. How cool is that? Now today, Perth Road can be quite a nightmare. Let's all call it what it is. Perth Road can be a nightmare. Because Perth Road goes to 150, which is always a nightmare, and I'm from Horseville, and I've lived there for all of my life, so I can say that. But back then, it was a path that made it easier to get back where they needed to go. And so all of these wonderful things came together, and eventually you can see different groups started settling on the path, and of course it would become more than just a place for animals to carve their way through the woods, but it became a place where people lived, people knew each other, and they developed. And right out here in this neighborhood, it's now protected so that we can go out there and see all the wonderful things that are growing and all the wonderful things they had access to. And over time, this was in the mid-1700s, and over time, in 1790, the town of Statesville, becomes the town of Statesville, and it grows from there. But it's now protected, which is so exciting, so exciting. So, yeah. But all of these little threads through the Great Wagon Road that come down through here. Such a dangerous time, such an amazing time. But this idea of moving westward past the Catawba River would start an entire chain of people developing, settling, and exploring over into the westward part of North Carolina, which really changed the facade of everything in our state, because everyone had stayed closer to the safer area on the coastline. So Sherrill's Path is a wonderful historical reminder of how, you know, the bravery, the tenacity, and just the go-get-emness of everybody was really, really, really exciting at that time. They chose this area because they looked at the trees that had been burnt down. They knew that that was a Native American way of doing things. That was just what they did. They burned everything, and they knew, the Sherrills knew when they crossed into that land was something that they were going to be able to take, and they did. They applied for the Granville grants, but they knew because that land was flat, it was previously burned by Native Americans, and they knew that that was some land that they would be able to use and live on. So anyway, that was how Sherrill's Ford got started. Sherrill's Path, one place from Sherrill's Ford to the Yadkin River, and here we are today. So it's a simple little story, it really is. But what questions can I answer for you? Yes.
Was there ever any collaboration between the Indians and the Europeans during the migration after the war period, as far as figuring out where to go or anything? Was it always conflict the whole time?
Say the first part again, I didn't hear.
Collaboration between the Indians and the Catawbas and Cherokee, between Europeans. You know, you mentioned there was obviously a war period. Was there ever any kind of peace period or any kind of trading or around information like scouts out west with Lewis and Clark kind of thing, or?
It was mainly in the 1700s. It was
just conflict.
Scary conflict. It was, and I mean, if you look at some of the stories, there's one really uplifting story. Widener was his name, and he was with a larger group of them. He and his family were some of the first ones to come across the Catawba. And they lived close to the river, but for some reason, the Native Americans liked him. And so he had to leave with a larger group and escape when things got very tense. But because he, for some reason, was liked by the Native Americans, there was this tree that was painted, and it was painted red, which meant don't come back yet, it's still too dangerous. But eventually, the tree was painted white, which meant it's okay to come back now. And so his family did come back after that. That tree remained standing until the 20th century. And it's just a really neat kind of folk tale, or I mean, I think it's a true tale, but it's still really a neat story. But there's other stories of, there was a baby who was scouted. You want to say something?
Thomas Spratt, the King Heckler. I was thinking of Thomas Spratt. Because he was definitely friends with the Catawbas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of many.
Yeah. Well, baby scout.
Baby scout.
Yeah. There's a story of a baby being scalped and died.
Oh.
Yeah. In this area.
European child.
European child. Yep.
Wow.
There's a story of there's varying numbers of how many people were killed. Around Fort Dobbs, even after tensions seemed to cease a little bit, their numbers vary. Maybe there were a dozen people killed. Maybe there were a few less than that. They're not sure. Maybe it was 20. It's just kind of all over the place, where it depends on what you look. But
are any of these people buried in that cemetery on Perth Road, or you know?
I'm not sure exactly where they're all buried. I'm not sure.
Probably not
Does anybody know for sure? John?
Well, I was wondering if there's something on the Indian aspect that he was asking. The Tuscarora used to live here in the Piedmont, but when the Spanish came through, the diseases were killing this was the hunting grounds for the Catawba and the Cherokee. They were actually at conflict, and in fact, they're still at conflict over the casino. That they say that's not the Catawba land, the Catawba say it is, it was their hunting ground. So this whole area, you had a Carolina buffalo that now is extinct, that they burned the land, and we had as big of herds of buffalo as they did out west. That's part of the reason they burned the land, and that's when the Sherrills came in. But we were really uninhabited with Indians here in the Piedmont because they had actually moved, the Tuscarora moved up north. So
Permanent movement, or is it?
permanently, well, because they were dying of disease, smallpox and everything, the Spanish came in, they went
Was
as
the
far.
Spanish, was that from the solo stuff in Florida?
Yeah, they went all the way up to Morganton, there's an old Spanish fort up there, the Cherokee attacked them, killed the Spanish there, they never did find gold here, so they didn't stay. If they had found wee gold mine, then they might have stayed. But
Oh, yeah.
this whole area was a Piedmont with buffaloes roaming, and the Indians used this whole area as grounds, just like we were talking about earlier. The trees out here, this is not what they saw when they moved into the area here. It was grassy plain.
Yeah, it was very much different.
I'm sorry, when did they migrate north, the Indians?
And they came in the 1500s, when was the Spanish, they did the
We've been after 1610 or so.
1580s, when the Spanish came through, they brought the diseases. And just think about it like a pandemic, worldwide pandemic, their immune systems were out. They thought the breathing the air here, which kind of sort of was correct. So they moved out permanently. They never came back.
So the Spanish folks were here in the 1580s from Florida.
Correct, but you can also go up to Morganton because they established a fort up there. There's a state historical, what is it, Fort Joara is up there, and they're doing archaeology up there now. But they killed the Spanish up there, they let one survivor leave, and the Spanish never came back. But this whole area was buffaloes, and, I mean, after they left, they didn't come back. But then, that's when there was war between the Cherokee and the Catawba over the hunting ground. And if the Catawba were on the east side of the Catawba River and went up around the bend here, Lookout Shoals Lake is where the Big Island is underneath that on the map here. Those were regular paths that the buffaloes took. The Sherrills ford in the bottom of the river, there's 9 islands that they had to cross. It makes a big S shape. Brazier's map, he was hired by the state of North Carolina to survey the Catawba River from high up all the way down, and he put everything in there, even to fishing traps that were made with dams, like the Indians did to catch fish. Because it was a big, if you catch the fish, dry them out with salt, send them to Charleston, you can make a lot of money.
This was Brazier's, was the name?
Brazier, you can look it up, it's a state, he did a survey of the Catawba River. What he did was he went and measured the readings of how deep it was, and he found every ford that was on the Catawba River. And he had notated all 9 islands, that they had to use the 9 islands to get across and come out. And so, that actually, it's right there where Lake Norman State Park is. And if you go through one of the neighborhoods, April Road, and under the power lines, that big power line that sits on the island out there, if you've looked at it, the ford on this side goes to the, if you're on this side, to the left of that, then it turns into the islands and goes down, makes a mess and come out. The best vantage point is on top of the cliff that's inside Lake Norman State Park. Does anybody work for the state? But that's all about Sherrills and why they settled there, because they found it just open Piedmont here, and it was a perfect place.
How much do we know about exactly where the Sherrill, where they settled? Do we know where the exact home site was, or do we just know the general area of where they
Well, they came across where that very shallow area was in the fort, and John's been more in that area than I have, so John, I'll let John answer that.
Yeah, it's like, is there anything existing of that home place? Is it somewhere people can visit?
Yeah, and that's what he went and actually found. Yeah.
Yeah. And did the Sherrills, did they just come straight off of the road and cross the Catawba, or did they pause like in the Fourth Creek area or Third Creek and then stop, and then make a second move across the Catawba, or did they just go straight?
They came straight across.
Straight
didn't they?
across, they didn't pause, okay, I read something that seemed to imply that they,
If they were living in the Third Creek area.
and then just
And then-
leapfrog over.
And then
from
leapfrog
there.
over.
I hadn't heard that before, so just, so thanks.
And they did make pauses as they came down the Great Wagon Road too, and they stopped for a little while, I believe in Virginia, Shenandoah. I mean, it was a long trek down, is what I read as well too.
In my studies, I read that Adam could speak Iroquois, and that he communicated with the Cherokees, and he was able to work out an agreement where he could work their land.
Mhm.
Is that true? Or do you know more about that?
I've read that he could speak Iroquois. I must have read the same source that you did. So, yeah, and that would help in that. I mean, it could have been much worse than it was. I think it was bad, but it could have been much worse. And I know that, like I said, there were some relationships going on that were good that helped calm down what was going on with, the individuals. I said there's some serious situations, but they left for a while. And they let calm take over for a while. So, do you know?
The French and Indian War time period, a lot of people left, even though they had bought land through the Granville Grant, because they didn't want to risk their lives.
Yeah.
And then, they started to come back after that, about 1763, because that was when the peace treaty was signed. But it was a 7 years war, that's what they call it in Europe, French and Indian. George Washington started it, by the way. It really was the First World War, because it went around the world. With the British empires and Spanish and the French, they were all fighting around the world at various locations.
But specifically around here,
Here,
she's saying.
the Cherokees were siding with the British. You can go up to Cherokee, North Carolina, at their museum, and they have a fabulous museum up there. And if you go in their bookstore, they've got books on the relationships of some of the British officers that were courting the Cherokee. And they actually took some of the Cherokee to London, and they actually, back then, the way you made pictures was you would carve into wood, and they have pictures of the Indians, the way they dressed, the Cherokee in London and met the king. So that's part of the reason why they had the proclamation line that went across the mountains to prevent settlement. That's part of what settled it down, because the proclamation, the king said there would be no European settlement across the proclamation line, which was 1763. But they would still have hunting rights over here. But as we kept moving more and more and more through the mountains and crossing the mountains, that's when the conflicts, especially by the American Revolution, started. And then you have the Henderson, who did a land deal in 1775, but a dragging canoe, said he never signed it or agreed to it. So you have ceasing of tensions and then rising up of tensions, because as soon as peace happened, you saw an influx. The path that she's talking about then turns into, like an interstate, and everybody's coming for the land, because again, it was the hunting ground. It wasn't where the villages were. So it just was an open door for all the settlers to move in here.
You were asking specifically, did he have? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I do understand that the hunting ground, that was a big point of contention, because that was the Indians' land. That was like
They considered it their land because they considered they could have hunting rights there.
And they cultivated it, and it was like their garden.
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
I think the whole country was theirs, kinda.
Yeah.
They saw land
Yes.
ownership differently than we did.
Yeah.
They didn't have fences.
Where did Chief Hagler come into all this?
Hagler is a Catawba Indian. He was down near the Catawba Indian Reservation. And he wanted to keep peace.
Gifted negotiator.
Yeah, he was a gifted negotiator. There was even one time where there was some Indian that did something wrong. Catawba appeal because of that against the Europeans, to keep that peace. Once they became surrounded, they knew that they needed to make nice. Even during the American Revolution, they were not called warriors, they were called soldiers, and they enlisted with General Sumter. They were at the start of the war from 1775. They were at Sullivan's Island and went all the way up through Guilford Courthouse. They have a long history, and they went from being called chief, like Hagler, to Democratic electing General New River, getting entitled general, but he was married to the chief's daughter, so, but.
Yeah, King Hagler called himself king because he was negotiating with Europeans who were, he wanted to be on the same standing.
Yeah.
He is so honored among the Catawba tribal members that he, to this day, when the Catawba potters create jars that have lug handles, the lug handles are always in the shape of a Native American's head. It's not just any, it's always King Hagler's head. And so any Catawba ware that you see with those distinctive lug handles, it's always honoring King Hagler.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think we've got time, I think, for just about one more question, maybe two, if we can squeeze it. And then what's going to happen is, I think we're going to have just a bit more music from Tom and Amelia, and you'll have time to sort of mingle and visit, especially Chris's collection. And then, since the weather seems to be taking a turn for the better, we will just sort of caravan down to the trailhead at Sherrill's Path and have a nature walk, and we'll tell you the plan for that. But Jane, did you have something to say?
One thing, this land, if y'all take a minute to look out the back window, Sherrill's Path picks up in the tree line, sort of going that way. And you sort of don't realize that, you get turned around with the roads. But when Dr. Gary Freese came, he was saying, and we walked it, that it probably picked up off of 21 where the old car wash is. So this is the high point of land around here. You're on it. The water falls towards the Yadkin and towards the Catawba. The old tree that's over here by the little farmhouse is, I had it dated by tree service. It's around the Revolutionary War era. So that's a red oak. It's huge. Well, anyway, I just thought you might find that interesting that this is the fall line for the Yadkin, and so we are in a land trust. We put this land in a land trust, and we're the top of land trust, but we could have gone with Salisbury.
Yo, I don't know a whole lot about history, but wasn't Daniel Boone in here, like around here, like that time?
He came down through just like a lot of these other people, all these other settlers, he came down as well. Yeah, he came down.
Was he? Oh, okay.
He came across Charlotte Ford, came across Charlotte Ford. He settled in Davie County.
Just like everybody else.
Oh, okay.
And here there's Boone's Cave over and close to Salisbury.
Yeah.
That's supposedly where he was, right there on the Yadkin.
Is this the same time as all this other stuff?
His parents are buried in Moxville,
Okay.
which is very interesting.
So we're talking mid 1700s still? Or are we talking?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
They came down from Pennsylvania, Squire Boone.
Gotcha. Okay. So that is.
If you have any questions about Native Americans, ask John. If you have any other questions, you can ask him. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Special thanks to Susan B. Dr. Susan Autry. Thanks also to John Meisenheimer for fielding some of those questions. And if we want to continue to talk about this stuff, this is a great time. But we'll have some music as well from Tom and Amelia, and some time to visit the table. And in just about 15 minutes or so, I think we'll wrap up and head down to Sherrill's Path itself for a little nature walk. Abigail, do you have any advice about the logistics of how all that's going to work?
Alrighty. So the trail is a work in progress. So although it has been preserved, the developer has not finished the access to make it easy for pedestrians, but we have been promised by the town of Troutman that will happen before the developer is released to go out and do another development somewhere. The piece that we're going to focus on is, so that they're on your flyer, there is an approximate address to the trailhead. There is not really any real address to the trailhead. That is my best estimate of an address to get you there. You'll see a map of Sherrill's Path on the side of the road, so it'll know, that's how you'll know that you're in the right spot. Parking is wherever you can find a parking spot. There is no parking lot.
The good landmark is the purple porta-john.
Yes, we did have a porta-john in case we had been there today, so you'll see that as a good landmark. But anyway, so we're gonna go, so that there's a map on one side of the road, and then there's a Sherrill's Path arrow on the other. We're going to go on the Sherrill's Path sign on the side the map is not on. And probably myself or Lauren or somebody will be directing you. And then Aaron, where's Aaron?
Bathroom.
Oh, okay, good, they can't leave. Aaron and I will be leading a nature walk to point out plants and different things. And so it'll be another spontaneous adventure in our phase 2. So we'll see you over there. Thanks.
Thanks so much. We appreciate that. Can we switch over to some pictures?
was talking about that. Yeah, I'm not sure about plants.
Yeah, I'm not good with
I'm
it
not
either,
good
but I recognize.
Yeah. Don't worry.
He
They're
said,
all.
was that the wild berry you were talking about?
They're all. Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of those.
I have some of those at my house.
You got deerberry? Yeah. We'll just wait on everybody to catch up with us. Maybe give a quick little chat. So y'all, do we know what Buffalo Traces are besides a whiskey brand?
No.
Right. Yeah. I find that to be the case. People throw that word around a lot without really even knowing what Buffalo Trace is, right? You have a guess as to what a Buffalo Trace would be?
Like Buffalo Shoals, like the road where they crossed.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I was thinking
Yeah,
they ate it.
it's a route. Yeah, it's literally a route that buffalo would take, right? And so even though our cool little acronym is HE, you know, with the history and then the ecology, if we're going to be realistic, the ecology came first, right? Before everything. It would make a weird acronym though, right? If it was just EHERTS or something. EHERTS. But in any case, history follows ecology in reality, and so what typically would happen is that the Native Americans would use the trails that all the little critters would naturally follow as well, because the path of least resistance is the name of the game when it comes to traveling through the woods, right? And so animals, small mammals, oftentimes would make natural paths, and then humans would follow those paths, and then other humans would come by and steal those paths from those the first people. But in any case, we're very clearly in an oak hickory forest. I don't even see any pine, so sometimes it's just an oak hickory. A lot of these, this is an oak that actually looks like one of the species that's been wiped out. That was one of the primary forest trees that you've probably heard about. The tree that we used to get a large crop from. Do we know what it was? Chestnuts, right? So chestnuts were the primary forest tree of most of the southeast, but in the early 1800s we brought over a fungal infection called the chestnut blight, wiped most of those out. However, this is an oak tree, but what do you think it's called? Chestnut oak, right? Yeah, chestnuts have these little. They've got little points at the ends of their leaves on true chestnuts. American chestnuts do still grow, but they're very rare. Like, you can come across them. Most of them will grow upwards to the 20-30 year mark and then continuously be killed back by the fungal infection that's still here. But there's mostly oaks. Another good indicator species that we're in an area that's been consistently disturbed for prolonged periods of time are these little star-shaped leaves. Anybody know what these are? They make those spiky little seed pods.
Sycamore.
Gumballs is what we call them here. That's a sweet gum tree.
Sweet gum.
So sweet gum is one of the primary indicators of disturbance, right? It's kind of strange to think, honestly, about the history of probably where we're standing. It's super strange. Like, we're talking giant buffalo. We're coming through here, and then people following these roads, probably the Native Americans, getting to better hunting land, and then the European settlers following the same path. And then now we've built. This reminds me of that paved paradise to put up a parking lot song, you know. But yeah, here's our sweet gum pods. It's just a really common indicator. Anytime you see those star-shaped leaves, you know that it's an area that has regular disturbance. What else do we see? These trees right here, there's two kinds of leaves in the woods. There are simple leaves, and then there are leaves that look like this, because this is a leaf. This is a single leaf. This is a leaf of a, anybody have a guess? Yeah, hickory, right? So this is a hickory leaf. There's two main hickory trees in oak hickory forests. There's what's called a bitter nut and a mocker nut. The mocker nut one has a hairiness to it. We call that tomentose in botanical terms. But it's got a hairy, hairy texture. There's all kinds of hickories, but those are the most common ones you'll run into. The easiest way to tell is if you actually have one of the hickory nuts. But just fun fact about hickories, if you go back and you think about the human diet prior to us growing all of our food, and you're wondering what the heck we ate probably more than anything, it's probably hickory nuts. because they were our primary protein source in times when our food was mostly foraged. Animals, I think a lot of people have this false idea that we were just running around harvesting animals with ease constantly and endlessly. And in case you have never hunted in your life, it is not an easy task, okay? Especially prior to modern technology. Most of our food was foraged, and we would manage stands of forest in deliberate ways. We would grow high concentrations of hickories and hazelnut, which was the first thing that Europeans used in forest farming. But in any case, I can ramble endlessly, but we've...
What percentage of this can we eat that we're seeing?
Oh, well, I mean, any of the hickory nuts are all edible. They're incredibly astringent. They're boil it multiple times, grind it down type of thing. And if you've ever had a friend that was super sensitive to flour, and you've had any of the substitutes like the gluten-free brownies and whatnot, usually it's made of different nut flours, which are, yeah, terrible. But no, you want some gluten-free bees? Yeah. Almond flour tastes, hickory nuts, acorns, all the nut flours taste kind of similar.
What about
We'll stick with rice, brown rice flour.
Oh, you want to know a fun fact? That's a funny question. Most leaves are edible. Yeah, young leaves, you guys, you can give them a good try. They're not great. However, some leaves are tasty, right? Things like crabapple leaves have a nice little crabapple-y flavor. Most leaves are edible. They're very hard to digest. They will cause some gastrointestinal distress. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the gut bacteria that we used to have, where we could more easily and readily eat the tree leaves. The best leafy green that you would want to eat out of this area is called pokeweed. It's a little purple-stemmed shrub situation that they used to eat, kind of like we do collard greens now. Poke salad,
Annie?
Poke salad.
Oh my goodness,
Poke
now
salad.
we'll start dancing.
Yeah. Poke salad. It's all over the place. Yeah, you guys, if you ever see in the ditch like a big giant purple stemmed plant, if we cross any, I'll point it out to you. Yeah.
Isn't it poisonous? No,
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, poke salad. The greens you got to boil. You bring to a boil, couple minutes, you strain it off. You bring to a boil again. You're fine. Yeah.
Back on that one, berries are poisonous, but in Appalachian medicine, a lot of the old timers swore by taking one berry
One
a
berry a
day.
day. It's like a aspirin situation. Just enough poison will keep you strong. You know? Yeah. All right, we can continue on. We'll keep going.
But you have to eat really
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Talking Appalachian is another podcast I really like. She doesn't put a whole lot out.
Y'all, another couple of really cool examples of things that are easy to interpret that a lot of people don't realize just generally walking through the woods. Kind of the pillowy nature of the woods that we're in right now are essentially indicators of what once was happening here. I don't think a lot of people know that, like, when you see these tiny little mounds of dirt, what essentially happened there is a giant tree fell over, it rotted, the big root mass that was uprooted when it fell typically breaks down into these tiny little pillows, and it's just an indicator of all of the different forests that have been here before. What's really crazy is if you're in an old enough forest, you can go up to some of these what we call pillows, and you can look at a mound of dirt, and you can see what's left there, and you can see if one side's kind of flat, and you can get an idea of the direction that tree fell over, and if there's any form of old wood remaining, then you can get dates of what may have fallen over nearby, and then you can figure out major storms that have been recorded, and basically you can be like, oh, it was probably the storm of 1812 that knocked over these particular major trees in this area, and that's what left these different little pillows, as we call them in forestry, in the forest. Another indicator of something that you can read about situations like this is when you see these multi-stem trees, oftentimes these were trees that were cut down and then resprouted or were damaged by travel along that particular corridor. So if you're in a forest and you see a lot of multi-stemmed or multi-trunk trees, it's a good indicator that it's been cleared before, that some kind of damage came along. What's really interesting is sometimes if you see two multi-trunk trees directly across from each other, it was an old forestry route and they were coming through and just clearing alongside. But yeah, just stuff that people just tend to look out and just see the same sort of thing. But there's actually a lot going on that you can kind of like deduce about the area that you're in. So kind of, oh, there's our pines. Oh, y'all, two main pine trees in Oak Hickory Pine Forest. One's called the Virginia pine. One's called the shortleaf pine. Virginia pine has bark. Right, here's the thing. I could tell you what their needles are like, but how are we going to get them?
Yeah,
right?
wow.
So it's not useful at all. If you look at the bark, it's all kind of like mottled together. Shortleaf pine, the other pine tree that is in Oak Hickory Pine Forest, have these big giant rectangles of bark. And so that's how you tell the difference between Virginia and shortleaf pine. Those are all Virginia pine right there with all the bark that's kind of mottled and stuck together.
And the longleaf pines are east.
Oh yeah, longleaf pine. Longleaf pine was
eastern.
the pine
Eastern.
of the southeast, but we wiped out almost all of them for building. I mean, it's the tree that built the South, right? We built all the
Oh,
homes.
okay, the longleaf pine.
Yeah,
but
longleaf pine.
But there's still more down east.
There
Not
are
really?
longleaf pine in certain areas, like the sand hills. Yeah, sand hills, and then there are certain areas close to the coast.
And
that have
then where
tons
the
of longleaf.
longleaf pine, whatever the poem, and the people get the longleaf pine award, like you'll
Right.
get one day, right? You know, what I'm
Right,
saying.
right,
And
yeah,
here
yeah.
we destroyed them.
Yeah, there's hardly any left. Yo, I mean,
Crazy.
once again, this is a natural forest type that occurs in North Carolina, but it was much rarer. And now it's much more common because this is the forest that regenerates when you cut areas down, and it's an area that tends to stay quite dry in the Piedmont, because what most of the South were savannas. It was just open grassland with trees. There were oak savannas where, guess what, the primary tree that was every 100, 150 yards were oaks, and then there were pine savannas where every 100, 150 yards were pines.
What's the
Right.
general age of these trees where we're standing?
So most of these are in the 30, 40 year range.
What?
Yeah, y'all, these are all super
Babies.
young. Yeah, I'm telling you, most people look at a forest and they're like, it's just been here. It's like, no, it hasn't.
They haven't seen old growth forests,
Right,
have they?
right, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, whenever you're in a forest and you see different sizes, you know that it's probably kind of young, because the smaller trees indicate that it's a young forest, obviously, but also because usually when you're clearing out an area, you get a big difference in growth rate between the trees that are just more aggressive in competition. Yeah. All right. I'll shut up. See how they're like silvery on the bottom? Yeah. Right. Oh no. This species in general has bloomed. These are too young. Yeah. Y'all, there's plenty of deerberry along the trail. If you're looking at it, it's a leaf that's silvery on the bottom. That blue-green color in leaves in botanical terms, we call it glaucus.
Glaucus.
Glaucus is also regularly used as a painting term to indicate blue-green coloration. Glaucus. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
Well, you're right. There's both ways. This way is just a little more acceptable.
This is the concrete. Yep. These are the seed pods.
Little flower that looks like a forget-me-not kind of.
Yeah, and there's that house.
If I can get it.
Yeah, they're gonna stick to your pants.
Street parking is good, and there's that little those parking spaces.
They will stick to your seat pad.
That is good for 4 people.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's got. Yeah, the plant's got all kinds of stuff in them, basically to prevent things from eating them.
How did you become knowledgeable about I don't know my plants.
Oh yeah, man. It's just I think it's whatever you tend to end up obsessed over, right? Yeah, because that was not even my expertise. In grad school, I was trapping owls and putting satellite backpacks on them and osprey. And then I was doing a thing with frogs and studying their musculature and stuff. But it wasn't until the university basically lost a couple of ecologists, and I realized that they were going to give me free range to teach anything I wanted. And I was like, anything? And they were like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I did horticulture, right? Because I've been, my grandparents in Bermuda were like big time gardeners, you know what I mean? But not like, not in like the fancy sense. They just had a bunch of old yogurt containers filled with tomato plants, you know what I mean? Right, yeah, and still do garden. So yeah, it was just a thing I was obsessed with, separate from all the other stuff. Yeah.
Aaron, while we're standing here, so if y'all in the back, don't know if y'all heard us, but this is the wild concrete, but it's also, this is Aaron,
Right. Yep.
what is it? Will you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, you guys, another really interesting, another important idea along travel corridors is how easily we spread stuff, right? And here's a great example of something terrible that we've spread. This is an invasive understory plant called Japanese stiltgrass or microstegium. This stuff can take over the entire understory of a lot of, in fact, I'm actually kind of surprised. Wild comfrey is kind of a sensitive native understory plant, and so it's an indicator that even though all of this stuff's going on, it'll be interesting to see in years to come how these populations are maintained, because this plant's kind of sensitive and picky, and
Which shares the territory.
right, exactly. And so yeah, this Japanese stiltgrass is definitely going to start to like outcompete it. So it could definitely be a thing we could do with like the volunteers is pulling invasives.
Grass that was back there that we passed, is that native?
No, I didn't see that one. We'll have to point it out to me on the way back.
Right down there.
Oh, that's probably just matured versions of this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this gets tall. Yeah.
So you don't, I've never seen this like hiking in a park or a
Right.
state park. So
You
I'm
have.
wondering.
You have.
It is?
Yeah.
I thought it was ground cover
Yeah.
maybe.
So we bring things everywhere with us, right? And here's a great example.
Speak
Yeah.
to this
yeah.
one. We were asked about this.
This is what is the common name for this? I think it's black snake fruit.
I think it is.
Yeah, black snake fruit is the common name for this one. It has a pretty Nabulus is the genus. It's got a really pretty to most people unremarkable flower, but right, exactly. I know that we only like big gaudy stuff, right? Everybody's like, if it's got its beak, it'd be giant and pink and shiny. You know what I mean? Everybody, you know what the most common color flower is in nature?
White.
Yellow. Purple.
None of us are right.
It's green.
Really?
Right, guess what? Because you know all of these trees bloom, you just never notice and you don't see it, right? And they have these tiny little, completely unremarkable green blooms on them, right? But trick question for sure. Yeah.
Now we got the answer, green.
So Jeff, actually, one more.
Not native.
Be red.
We have a lot of
Yeah, they're great ferns. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ferns throughout here. We've got these tiny little what's called grape ferns. We've got these.
You're saying, wait a minute, you're saying grape.
Grape.
Great.
Yeah, and then we've got, this is much more common, this long, and don't worry, it's not going to do any damage. This is called ebony spleenwort. It's probably the most common fern in the southeast period. This is cool because this will grow in dry shade. So it's another good, like, if you got an area at your house that is dry shade, you know that it is hard to garden. But this is a really good species for dry shade. Ebony spleenwort is a fern. Y'all know what ferns grow from, right? Spores. They have tiny little things that were like seeds before seeds existed. And if you look on the back of this one, you can see these little things. You can remember this because they're called sore eyes, right? And you can just think of sore eyes. And sore eyes are where the spores are kept. If you want to grow more of them, you can literally just take a little bit You can take one of those rotisserie chicken containers from Harris Teeter, and then you could fill it up with moss, and then you can just drop this in there, and the spores, and you put it in a little corner of your yard somewhere, and you come back 2.5 years later, and you grew ferns from spores. Yeah, if you really want bragging rights, that's up there. That's there. I got ferns I grew from spores. Oh yeah. Old. Prehistoric for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, ferns.
Plant we're looking at today?
Oh, definitely. From a geologic time perspective, ferns were definitely in the early Triassic. We're talking 200 million years ago.
You're kidding me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Still alive.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes our time as human beings seem pretty scarily insignificant, for sure.
I just want to know what poison ivy is.
I can show you poison. I'll show you. Do you recognize poison ivy?
Sort of, but I was in a wreck years ago on the Blue Ridge, and that was a big thing on the wreck. I had to go to the hospital for it so bad.
Oh my.
My skin hates it. It's poison oak, blisters, whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I can. I'm good at recognizing poison
Yeah, I
ivy.
see it. I'm not really a big.
I don't see. I'll tell you if I see. I don't see any wood, but it jumps out at me.
It's kind of shiny.
It can. I mean, it can take on different.
The same
You,
plant.
it can. Some of the leaves have big serrations. Some have small. It just. But it all.
This thing,
The more you get to recognize it, you
that's
can
the
tell.
Let me ask you about something you're familiar with, pottery.
Yeah, we've got the non-invasive mulberry, but that's
cooking, cooking with
white mulberry.
We've got a reasonable. Is pottery safe to cook with or gluten?
Yes. It's. I mean, with cooking with it, you have to. I mean, can it take the thermal shock?
Yeah.
Like being heated up really rapidly. Some can. I mean, well, you know, I mean, native peoples cooked in earthenware. I don't know how they kept it from breaking when they heated it up, but as well as like India, they still cook with a lot of earthenware. They say it gives the food, imparts a certain flavor. Yeah, as long as if it's glazed, then the glaze she's got it.
Oh, she's at that.
But
So we have some ruins here that I think were the young family.
Susan, you have been requested to the front of the line, please.
Susan?
you can put it in the oven. You can put it on the open flame But yeah.
So what do we have here?
So we have some ruins here that I this possibly is young.
This ruins of the Young House.
The young house.
Oh,
So cool.
So this is what Dr. Freeze came out here and identified as the ruins of a house, and the trail went by, and he was like, this has to be the place that absolutely confirms that this is the trail built in. Oh, this is amazing!
I want to get your picture. I know. I want to get your picture.
Oh, is this the first time?
It ain't gonna move, it's just rock.
Yes, please do. Oh, and I'm wearing this horrible. Sorry, Jody.
Fine.
I'm keeping you warm.
I know you're keeping me warm, but it's
So
so
more
big for
to
me.
come in future Cheryl's Path events on who were the Youngs. We're going to learn more about them.
I didn't hear what you said.
Who are the Youngs? We want to know more about them.
So they were settlers too that came down here and they built a house. A lot of people, all that was left, it said in the writings, were that the Youngs built, just like a lot of other people did, on this trail and established it as a major, I hate to use the word thoroughfare, but it grew into a thoroughfare, and that they were some that had come down as well. And their house, what remained of it, and Dr. Gary Freeze confirmed that even though it's just stones, this appears to be what was the remnants of the home that they had on this trail, and used it as a marker to confirm exactly what this was. So this is phenomenal.
And while we're here, probably one of my favorite little wildflowers, Pepsisua, or
Wintergreen, yeah.
Wintergreen.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Come and see, and if you guys can come and take turns gently and smell them.
Here, just use my phone.
They're fragrant, but they're a very fragrant little flower.
Yeah.
Sissewa was the Native American name, I believe.
And I'm wearing my hand.
Any other words about it? No? Okay. So you can check that one out. Yep.
Evergreen in the wintertime.
That's right. No, it is called wintergreen, not to be mistaken with wintergreen like the mint. It was just called wintergreen because it was green in the winter. It is not to be eaten.
Hey, Abigail.
Fun fact.
Abigail,
You know what?
before we move on, if you
Yeah.
just want to mention that this is where we were going to have the entire program today.
Oh,
If we
even
didn't-
neater.
I'll step
We wouldn't have been told at all.
to the stage. You would have been.
Are you having that next year?
Oh, Lord.
Of erosion. Like when you see areas that are collapsed in the forest and they're not just a single divot where a tree probably fell down and it's elongated, then usually some sort of, it could be an old forestry road, it could be an old actual road or path. It's usually just erosion.
You know, in the mountains, there are so many of those roads, as my husband pointed out, those, what are they called, logging roads?
Logging
or
roads.
Fire roads?
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
It is amazing.
This is
Oh yeah, there's so much cool stuff to be found along old logging roads. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, and now with the invention of electric vehicles, you can get up in there without, you can just cruise up in there. So they're making them, there's a lot of contention as to whether or not they should allow that, because it's basically allowing people who cannot physically take themselves far into the wilderness to get far into the wilderness.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. And then they get 14 miles deep in the wilderness on their little electric bicycle and they're stuck. Yeah. Right.
Well, for any adventurous, more adventurous pioneers, we do have a little group going on. So feel free to join them if you wish.
And look at your
My mother is one of them.
Without her,
That's my mom leading the pack.
and here I am.
Going to the river.
There you go.
We do have a little snake education here.
Don't squeeze it because you can pop the lid and you can pass it around. That's what a real baby copperhead looks like. We only have 4 venomous snakes in America. 3 of them are pit vipers. This is one of the pit vipers. And one is in the same family as a cobra or sea snake. That's the coral snake. Although they are in the coastal side of North Carolina, you'll never find a coral snake. They're extremely rare. We do have rattlesnakes in the mountains. We have the timber or canebrake. That's the same snake actually. But the most common is this little guy right here. And if you look at his head, it looks completely different than the ones that people cut up and ask me if they're copperheads. It's almost never a copperhead. Most of the snakes that are brought to me dead are decay snakes. It's a tiny little snake that eats worms, and it can't even bite. It can't even bite.
Now, aren't there eastern rattlesnakes?
Not here at the coast. Yeah, you won't find them in this area.
At the coast.
But this is a baby copperhead. You'll notice he's got little Hershey kisses on his back. And if you look really close, he's starting to lose it, but he's got a yellow tipped tail.
Oh, he's so cute.
When they're first
See him in
born,
there?
and they are
Let me get on that
literally
side.
the eggs have no shell like normal eggs. They're retained inside the mom, and then they hatch inside the mom, and then they're expelled. When they first come out, they do have a bright yellow tipped tail.
Dad has his little Hershey kisses all over him.
Lasts a couple weeks, like just that season. This one's from last year in the winter, and it's still
Yeah,
a
not
little
yet.
bit
He said he's
yellow,
only
but
got
it's
a
not
little
that
bit of
bright
it
yellow
left
that
on
you
them.
hear about.
Only a little bit left.
Oh, there you go. So you'll recognize
Yeah, you can see through there a little better. Yeah.
Snakes are technically
He's like, hey guys.